Welcome back to the XM Podcast. Here is your host, licensed mental health therapist, Matthew Knabe.
Well, today's guest, I have to be honest, his story astonished me. Last fall, our church asked my wife and I to lead a brand new community group. One that was going to be filled with primarily people who were just coming out of our new members class. So starting a community group during a pandemic that's going into the holidays, full of people who have never met in person, is a bit of a daunting task. But it has been extremely rewarding so far. We've had a handful of meetings over video calls, and each week new members of the group share their testimony. A couple weeks ago, today's guest, he shared his testimony, and I just felt like his story needed to be heard. I have to be honest, I've heard a lot of things and have worked with a large population of people who suffer from different afflictions, but Brandon's is unique. I'd like to introduce our guest today, Brandon Dreger.
Well, I'm just a dude.
Just a dude.
I'm just a dude. Yeah, it's such a weird question. Like, when people ask me to about myself, I never know what to say. I don't feel like I'm that particularly interesting.
Oh, trust me, my friend, you are interesting.
So, I was born into a Christian family, and I just really normal life. Parents were recent converts to Christianity, and I believe that I had a couple moments in church growing up where I accepted Jesus or whatever, said the words, prayed that little prayer that they tell you to pray, but there was no deeper change in my heart in those moments. So it was a religion for me and not a faith. And I just kind of went sometimes kicking and screaming because, you have to go to church on Sunday, you have to go to Wednesday night Bible, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of your lot in life as a Christian kid around here, at least. Mm-hmm. That was my experience. So I did that and just kept going through the motions. Went through youth group at the church we had started going to when I was real young. And still nothing changed in my heart until eventually on one fateful night, I got caught sleeping with my girlfriend in high school. I was a sophomore in high school.
Oh boy.
And
who caught you?
So believe it or not, the jury is still out on that.
Okay.
I would have to ask my parents. Someone told them.
Oh.
So it wasn't like caught red-handed. That would be horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, that probably would be traumatizing.
That would be very scarring. But yeah, they found out somehow and they confronted me on it. And, in a Christian household, that's a no-fly zone. Mm-hmm. So I had this moment in my bedroom after, getting, not physically spanked, but that's the feeling you have,
Right.
So I'm like sophomore in high school, and I basically just got spanked, and I was just really angry at God. And I was angry because I wanted to live life the way I saw fit. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to, just do me. And
right.
I felt like he was like, I didn't want to be a Christian. Mm-hmm. And I felt like he wasn't letting me.
Wow.
And so in this moment of like rebellion, this conversation with God, I heard him speak to me, and I've told you this story before. It's very hard for me to articulate, but it was like a loud. It was a loud sound for sure. I felt like God yelled at me. But in that moment, I couldn't tell you what God said in words, but I could tell you what it meant to me. Mm-hmm. And what it meant to me was that I had been like chosen. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, coming from a few moments earlier, asking like why won't you just let me leave you, essentially. So, the contrast there, moments later I hear God's voice, and he's telling me that I don't have a choice anymore, that you're mine, kiddo. This isn't going to change.
So this all happened when you were 16?
Yes.
Wow. So you get caught having sex with your girlfriend.
Right. Yep.
And then you get the punishment with that, and then all of a sudden God reaches out to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he reached out to me, and that change was so drastic for me that my life pivoted very hard. Like, we switched churches, and I was fortunate enough to be put in a youth group with a guy who just was really articulate and really good Bible teacher, and I went full bore, like that old DC Talk song, Jesus Freak. Man, I became a Jesus freak like overnight.
Yeah. Oh, that song brings back a lot of memories for me.
Oh, me too. It was my first CD that I ever got.
Really?
Yeah. And I would listen to it on repeat because that's the only music I had. I had my little boombox in my bedroom.
Well, we won't do it over the podcast, but I've got stories for days. That was the era I was in the Christian industry, and I played Jesus Freak more times than I can tell you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah, we'll do that some other time, not on the air. But so does life just take a 180 at that point?
It does, yeah. Life took a 180. I was super involved in youth group, and I was the weirdest Christian ever, looking back. So one week, I am being a typical high schooler, having sex with my girlfriend, doing, drinking, doing whatever with the guys. And a week later, I've had such this transformative moment that my mind is like a sponge, and I'm trying to absorb all this information about God, and so I'm still dating this girl. And my youth pastor and my buddy Ryan, they were like, you should probably, is she a Christian even? Like, and I was like, no.
But you could have been like, but I wasn't either a week ago.
Yeah. They were like, you should probably not be in that relationship. Yeah. And so, like a complete and total weirdo, I heard what I was supposed to do, and the next day I did it. The next day I walked into school and broke up with my girlfriend.
In retrospect, was that a good idea? Or
absolutely.
It was, okay.
It was a great idea. Yeah, it was sound advice. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I pretty much, I did, like I said, I was a sponge, man. So I just kind of was soaking up what I could. I started reading everything that I could find. I would listen to sermons online, and
you went all in.
All in, yeah.
That's awesome. And so, what does life look like then for you? I mean, that's a pretty drastic change. I mean, I'm assuming your friend circles must change. The things that you're doing on a regular basis must change.
Yeah. Well, my friend group changed completely. I think half of it was that I just wasn't around as much because I was so involved with my friends that were Christian. And so I lost some friends because of that, just by default, I think. And the other half of the friends that I lost is because I scared them off,
You Bible thumping them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I could have used more tact looking back.
Well, you were 16. We all could have used more tact when we were 16. How did your parents respond to this drastic change?
I think they were happy to see me playing for the team and wanting to, if that makes sense. So, and I think that I was such a good liar as a kid that they probably thought I was saved the whole time.
Oh, because
I never acted out in front of them. I was the good kid. I was the oldest.
So when they're listening to this now, they're just going to start realizing, wait a minute, Brandon wasn't a Christian the whole time?
Dude, I've been baptized 3 times.
How many times are you supposed to? I've only been baptized once.
You're only supposed to get baptized once?
Just making sure I'm not missing out on 2.
Yeah. It was like, yeah, well, you know how it is. It's like, people talk about, I fell away from the faith for a while, and then, I'm coming back. I want to get baptized again. And I had done that a couple times before I actually even got saved. And so by the time I got saved, my youth pastor was like, "Do you want to get baptized?" And I was like, "Dude, I think I'm good."
Yeah, I'm covered.
Yeah.
How many times can one person be saved? It's it's really
well,
funny.
that's the thing. If you're looking at it from a strict mathematical theological standpoint, the answer is once.
Right.
But
for you, multiple.
But for me,
that's great.
Yeah.
So take me a little bit further into life after 16. What does life look like?
Well, life after 16, it is basically just involves who's now my wife, because we started kind of talking towards the end of high school, and we started dating when we were 18, and I think we were like halfway through our senior year of high school we started dating, and we were so like, my wife actually wasn't a Christian when we started dating, which is kind of funny.
you just don't learn.
Dude, that's my life. My life is a series of bad decisions on my part.
Yeah.
But I much like the Israelites who wanted to go back to Egypt, I don't learn sometimes. So
that's right.
Yeah, so I was dating this girl who was really nice girl, but was not a Christian. And so I did what my youth pastor at the time had dubbed missionary dating, which is where you date someone with the intention of converting them to become a Christian.
Right.
Oh,
it sounds like a great idea. And if you're listening and you're a kid, this is not something that we're encouraging you to go try. I don't think the success rate's very good at that.
It's not. You know what's crazy though? To make this even weirder, the statistics. Last time I looked at them, because I did at one point, the success rate when the male is Christian is insanely high.
Really?
Yeah. It's the ladies that have trouble convincing the dudes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How did they get that data?
It was based off of just like, I don't know who would run such a study, but I remember Mark Driscoll talking about it in a marriage sermon.
Okay.
About how like when in couples, it's his point was, he was talking about gender roles.
Yeah.
And how the man needs to steer the household.
Sure.
And how much weight that carries, as evidenced by, if a man's a Christian, his lady's probably going to become a Christian.
Interesting.
So a little rabbit hole there. Sorry.
No, that's good. I mean, that that's a very interesting fact that I did not know that.
Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
So, so my wife and I are dating, and
that sounds funny.
Yeah.
My wife and I are dating. You mean
she's my wife now? Yeah, my girlfriend at the time. So we start dating. I hid that fact from my youth pastor and my best friend for a while because I knew that they were going to give me crap for starting a relationship with somebody who wasn't batting with the same jersey on. Mm-hmm. So my wife just slowly, she started like soaking up what the things that I would say, and she tells me this now. I find it crazy. She tells me that I was the first person to tell her that she needed Jesus to be saved.
Wow.
Even though she had grown up in church, she had somehow that had been missed, which, I guess it's not that crazy. If you don't have the Holy Spirit inside of you, you miss a lot of things.
Yeah. Just
going through church. But Sarah started to change, and my missionary dating was working flawlessly. And we graduated. She was going to college, and I happened to be helping out with a church plant in the same town she was going to school. So her and I helped out with this church plant for a while, and my youth pastor eventually ejected where he was at and joined us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then after that was kind of kicking for a while, we decided, a group of us, to leave and go start another one in Kent.
A church plant.
A church plant, yeah. So, gosh, man, it seems like forever ago. But yeah, we did that for a while.
Were you guys married at that point, or?
Oh yeah, sorry, I did skip over that. We did get married pretty young.
Uh-huh.
Because, and the reason is pretty funny looking back, but we were really concerned about staying pure, physically speaking. And we knew like a lot of couples that had not done that. And we really wanted to honor God and not have sex before we were married. And as we're growing together emotionally and spiritually, physically is right around the corner, so we started to realize that dealing with that temptation, was going to be difficult the longer we waited. So that was the main reason for me pulling the trigger. And we ended up getting married after we dated for a year, and then we were engaged a year. So yeah, 2 years we were married.
And how long have you been married now?
Okay.
Am I putting you on the spot?
No, it's me trying to remember how old I am, because we got married when
That's even worse.
And my birthday was recent too.
Okay.
I think 7 years, because we got married when we were 20 and I just turned 27. So
okay,
that checks out. Yeah.
Good. And it's going well.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
good.
actually, I mean, we've been through some, for sure, ups and downs, which we'll talk about at some point, but we're at a place now where I feel very fulfilled and I feel blessed. Well,
Brandon, I want to get into it. So I want to set this up a little bit. So a couple weeks ago, you and I are in a community group together.
Yes.
And we have been sharing testimonies. And a couple weeks ago, you and your wife, it came around to your turn, and you shared. And being a mental health therapist, I've heard a lot of things. But I got to be honest with you, when you shared what your trial was and the adversity you went through, I was like, I don't think I've ever heard of that before. And as soon as our Zoom call was over for community group, I reached out to you and I was like, dude, would you be willing and open to talking about this on the podcast? Because I think it's, one, I think people are going to be like, what? And then two, I think there are people probably suffering from things out there that we can bring a little bit of hope to. Not to say that God's healing everybody the same way, but well, without me giving too much away, tell me about this adversity you went through years ago.
Sure. So this started when I was working as a police officer, and one day I was sitting in dispatch, and I smelled like the smell of burning tires, and I asked my buddy next to me if he smelled it, and he said no, and I thought nothing of it. But a week later, it like happened again, and the smells just kept changing, and I didn't know what it was, but it wasn't inhibiting anything major in my life, so I just kind of ignored it, and that it just got progressively worse. Like not only the frequency of having a smell that no one else smells, and trust me, I checked multiple times.
I'm sure.
Hey, does anyone else smell a 2-week-old body? Like,
tell me a little bit, like, what were some of the smells that you were getting, and then realizing, oh my gosh, I'm the only one smelling this?
Yeah, well, like I said, at first it started out with like, it smelled like burning tires was one, and another was like, if you've ever, that weird smell of like an electric motor that's burnt out.
Yes. That
kind of metallic burning smell. So it was those types of smells at first, and the longer it went on, it was more like, it was less chemically and less metallic, and more like rotten meats. And like I said, I mean, I have, due to being a police officer, I have smelled bodies that have been sitting for a while. Mm-hmm. And it started to smell more like that, like something that's spoiled.
So you're smelling like rotten, like flesh?
Yeah, rotten flesh, burned hair. A lot of people have smelled that. That's another one that I would smell a lot. But the problem for me was that the frequency just kept growing. Mm-hmm. And so I think from the first time it started, maybe within the first like 4 months, it was like on a weekly basis, we'll say. Mm-hmm. Then a couple months later, it was a daily basis, but not enough to really affect my life too much. I would not eat during those times, obviously, because when you like, smell is so connected to your perception of taste. And so I would smell things that are very bad and smell spoiled. And I mean, nobody wants to eat like a moldy piece of chicken or something. So I would just, I would not eat. And what I started doing too is I would start like flushing out my nasal passages, and that would work sometimes in that it would like cover everything up and I couldn't smell anything. Mm-hmm. So I was essentially neutralizing my sense of smell if I needed to eat. But yeah, a couple months later, man, like that, all those tools that I was trying to use, they just stopped working over time. So about a year into this, it was not only daily, but it was like most of my day. So what I would do is I would wait until it would go away, and then I would go eat everything in sight.
Really?
Yeah. It'd get as much in my belly as I could. Yeah, sometimes it would happen while I was eating, and I'd get super angry. Like I remember one time I was having like a good day, and if you know me, you know that I fiercely love Chipotle, and I have ordered like the same thing at Chipotle for the past decade. So it's like a almost ritualistic experience for me going to Chipotle. And I remember there were multiple times where I came home with Chipotle and was like a couple bites into a burrito and just bam, it hit me. And
so doesn't everything taste like that? If that's what you're smelling, what you're eating tastes like what you're smelling?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So not super fun, but I mean, mentally this just started taking a toll on me because I didn't have the tools to deal with that kind of like constant, I don't know what the word is. I guess oppression is how I viewed it. Because a year into this, it was just constant. Like I'd wake up smelling things and I'd go to bed smelling things, and I had to like eat bland foods. I did eat every other day most of the time through that second year of dealing with that. So
up until that point, was there any, like, did you go to your doctor or anything and be like, hey, like, what is happening?
Yeah, I did. I had a neurologist that was working on it, and an ENT, which is a ear, nose, and throat doctor. So the ENT was doing not a lot, honestly. He kind of told me from the beginning that he's had a few patients that have had it, and the symptom is called phantosmia. And so
it's a real thing.
It is a real thing. It's rare, and unfortunately for me, most people that get it experience it for less than a year, and most people smell like sweet, sugary, fruity things.
You got the raw end
I
of
got
that
the
deal.
raw end of the stick.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Yeah. So he said, it might go away someday. And that was kind of what he said. The neurologist was more of like a scientific angle. They were doing EKGs and like brain scans, every kind of donut machine they could put my head through. It went through. So
they find anything?
No. And my wife was really glad because one of the things that the neurologist was worried about was there's a certain part of your brain that if a tumor grows and it pushes on it, it can affect your sense of smell. So we were glad that I didn't have a tumor, obviously, but part of me was like, man, I'll take that tumor. They can cut me open and take that thing out and I can be done with this.
At this point, how is this then affecting your personality, your mood, the person that you are? I mean, year in, and then it keeps going. I mean, I think when you and I last kind of talked about this, you said this lasted, kept going for at least 2 years. How does that weigh on you, and how does that then affect your marriage?
Well, it affected my marriage a lot. My wife had to basically take over everything because I couldn't be counted on, because I was like not only super grumpy all the time, but I was like so overwhelmed by this thing that I couldn't really be, like I said, I couldn't be counted on. Like I was unreliable and angry, upset. But it affected my relationship with God most of all, because my wife is a trooper. When it comes to hard stuff, she takes it on the chin pretty well. And she's very good at suffering for a long time. Which is, I'm glad that I had her for sure. Yeah. I think honestly, if I would have married somebody else, I might not have been married at the end of this.
Really?
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
It was bad. But it affected my relationship with God a lot too. I think a lot of people get kind of angry with God when they suffer. I never took that approach because that's just not my personality. But I did frequently ask God to like steer a semi over the line so that I could, die and not have to deal with the constant smell anymore.
I mean, the smell was so bad. You got to a point where it's like, Lord, you know what? Just take my life.
Yeah, I want to be done. Like, I don't care how it happens. And like I told you last time, I was never going to commit suicide.
Right.
That's also not my personality, but I wanted to quit. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. It's like that feeling where you just feel like you have nothing left to give. Like that feeling when you are doing something difficult physically and you're tired and you're wore out and you're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm quitting. Mm-hmm. That's how I would wake up feeling, just like, I'm so done with this, man. Like, I don't know. It was very emotionally draining.
And during that time, and I could be remembering this incorrectly, but you even came to emerge, I think, at one point.
I did. That's where things started to turn around for me.
Yeah, talk to me about that experience.
So, I started going to emerge after in my time with being married to Sarah, I had never raised my voice at her, ever. And there was one day where I was so upset that I was like screaming at her. And after that whole thing, she was like, you are going to counseling. And I was like, I messed up. I know I need to get some help. So yeah, I started going to counseling, and I think I don't want to take away credit from my counselor, but I also feel like God whipped my heart around in that moment. Mm-hmm. Not in that moment, but in that time when I started going to counseling.
Sure.
Because it really had just, the pressure had blown, and I knew that I couldn't keep living this way, or I was either going to become, like, I was going to need to be institutionalized, or something drastic was going to have to happen if I didn't change the trajectory. So I started going to emerge, and through conversations with my counselor, it was like there was a moment where I decided, one, that I was going to accept the fact that this might not ever go away, and stop hoping, in a sense, in staking my hope, placing my hope on the possibility of me getting essentially what I want. Mm-hmm. And so I, just as best I could, every time I felt angry, I tried to remind myself that this is my life right now, and I am not going to let this determine who I become. And it was difficult, and it took a lot of repetition, and man, it's hard. I
can't imagine.
Yeah, well, I mean, any kind of suffering too. It's just hard to have the stamina, especially when it's chronic. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people that are even now dealing with like chronic health issues, and I totally get it. Like,
it's tough. It's tough because it's an everyday thing. So tell me about what happened then, as that second year kind of came to an end. That there was an event that took place. Share a little bit about that.
There was, man. It was one of the coolest moments of my life.
Yeah.
So Sarah and I were getting ready to go on a trip to Florida to visit my brother for he had a military school he was going through, and he was graduating. And like every normal day, those couple of years, I woke up and I smelled like, I don't remember what it was that day, some kind of rotten something. Mm-hmm. And packed up, went to the airport, got on the plane, and as we were flying to Destin, Florida, I felt that sensation like leaving my body. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably going to get emotional talking about this again.
It's okay. It's all right. It's heavy.
I'm blessed to have a beautiful experience like this. And so I felt it like leave my nose, and I didn't want to jinx it, but like what I had been upset about before was the fact that I wasn't going to get to enjoy that smell of the ocean, right? Mm-hmm. And dude,
it's okay.
After years of like praying for death so that I could be done, just be done with it, I stepped off the plane and I could smell. Mm-hmm. And I know I don't deserve that healing that I got. I know so many people who are suffering through hard things, and I just feel really blessed in that moment. Like, it changed the way I view the world and the way I view God. And like, I think beforehand I felt like God was perfect, but his goodness wasn't as real to me as it is now on this side of this. Yeah, it was. And now, like, I don't worry about stuff anymore because I feel so blessed, just lucky. Like, I had just got done accepting the fact that this was probably never going to go away. And I touched down in Florida, I believe it was 2 years ago now. And it hasn't happened again since, which goes against what the doctors told me was going to happen. Was it's going to fade away. It's going to, it may be, yeah.
Wow. And so I'm just hearing your story, it gives me goosebumps and all kinds of things. Talk to me a little bit about that emotion you were just experiencing. What was kind of coming up? I mean, that's a powerful moment to go through that suffering for 2 years. And then all of a sudden God goes, okay, Brandon, you're healed.
Well, for me is like, I understood, like, I didn't fully understand, but I understood better what heaven is going to be like. Like, stepping off that plane and feeling relief. Like, I think a lot of people are worried about dying. I am less worried about dying now than I ever have been, because I know how good it's going to feel to walk through those gates and just, especially, like, I mean, life is hard on people in different, like it's not all equal. Not everybody has the same amount of hardship in their life, but we all have it to some degree. And in that moment, I just felt like joy and God's goodness. And I feel like I understood a little glimpse of what heaven's going to be like because of that relief of burden. And
wow, that is so powerful, man. I've heard of the hallucination of sight, of hearing.
Yeah.
But living with this smell, I mean, I would imagine if you were still having this, you'd be like, somebody just give me COVID. Like,
yeah, give it to me now.
Give it to me now. What's the last 2 years been like living free of this ailment?
Every day's been great.
Yeah.
Every day, and especially the days where I force myself to remember how bad it was. Mm-hmm. Those are the best days, man. Because I'm just like, and when something crappy happens, I look at my wife and I say, I don't have to smell dead things today, so it's still a good day.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, like you said, we all have adversities. We all go through different things in life, different trials.
Yeah.
And you may not have an answer for this, but what do you think that might have been for you in your life? I think God allows things to happen. I know I have my story, and I've shared that on the podcast before a little bit, and some of the things I endured. Looking back 2 years now, what do you think is some of the takeaways for you going, oh, that's what God was doing 2 years ago?
I would never say that God caused it to happen to me, first of all.
Sure.
Even though I used to think that. I was never mad at him for it. I felt like, if you're doing this to me, I deserve it. It's hard for me to talk about suffering on this end of it, because looking back, I'm like, I don't know if when you're in the struggle, it's different. It's easy to say, oh, this is what you can learn from suffering when you're not suffering. But on this end of it, I feel like suffering is a way we get to participate in Jesus. Mm-hmm. I mean, he suffered more than any of us. And when we suffer, we can take that as an opportunity to be a part of that. And it's a cleansing process. Mm-hmm. Suffering can either cripple you or it can sanctify you. And doesn't have to be one or the other. It's going to be hard and messy.
Yeah.
But on this end of suffering, for me, I am a better husband, a better Christian, just a better person. Mm-hmm. I guess my takeaway is that suffering doesn't have to be all that bad.
Yeah. I love the saying that, we don't meet God at the top of the mountain. He meets us in the gutter.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true, dude.
Yeah. Because it's like, I know the way I visualize life, it's like this long and narrow, windy road, And every time I fall off the path, God's there to pick me up. And those are my adversities. And it's you know, I again, and I know I quote this all the time, and all my clients who are listening are like, we know you love the book of James, but I love the book of James. And but James talks about, he goes, if we don't suffer, then what is the reason to send a savior? If we don't have difficulty in our life, then there was no point of Jesus. Like if everything was like the Garden of Eden, it's copacetic, well then there's no point of Jesus. And you know, oftentimes I think most stories, when you hear most testimonies, it's when somebody's going through a rough time is when they find Christ. It's not all the time, but you know, a lot of the times that's when we find him. And if it's not, you know, if you were a Christian before, then you really lean into him when the adversity comes, because there's not a person on this planet that hasn't experienced adversity or difficulty.
I mean, dude, as Christians, the bar for our expectation of how much comfort we can expect is set pretty low, because our God was homeless when he came to earth. Jesus was homeless for most of his adult life and was sentenced to a crime he didn't commit and was tortured to death. So that kind of sets the bar pretty low. I think, you know, if we're expecting that we're going to have this neat, comfortable life.
That's exactly right. Man, I appreciate you so much sharing this story, and I just think it's powerful. It's just really interesting, and I'm really enjoying getting to know you. You and I were kind of introduced several months back, and through our community group and stuff, we've been getting to know each other a little bit, and I'm so appreciative of you being open to share your story on the podcast.
Absolutely, man.
Well, I appreciate you being here. God bless you, my friend.
Thanks. God bless you too, brother.
Phantosmia is a medical word used by doctors when a person smells something that is not actually there. Phantosmia is also called a phantom smell or an olfactory hallucination. The smells vary from person to person, but are usually unpleasant, such as burnt toast, metallic, or chemical smells. What a redemptive story of healing Brandon shared today. A really interesting guy, which you could probably tell I really enjoyed spending time with during this podcast. Thank you for listening. Please check out emerge.org for more information around who we are as a ministry, and share this podcast. Give us a comment or a like. Well, until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless.